I think we are live now. Okay, good morning to our respective figures. We are streaming live on social media platforms with Professor Dalangin of Economics, Professor Dayan of Environmental Ethics, and of course Engineer Mavi De Luna to recall about the ongoing non-government organization project held by the Philippine Environmental Studies Organization entitled Principle of EnvironEthics: The Way Forward. Alright, so everyone, to start off the conference, part of the public would like to actually talk about environmental ethics. We will reflect on some of these issues, particularly on fossil fuels. So what can you say about the ongoing issue right now, Professor Joseph?
Fossil fuels are one of the pioneers of the strongest economies of countries around the world. Nations like the United States, the United Kingdom, and other deemed first world countries benefited from fossil fuels ever since the outset of the Industrial Revolution. According to an article by Gross in 2020, fossil fuels is the modern economy's lifeblood and serves to solve socioeconomic issues such as poverty and help build the world we live in today.
Alright, however, no, Professor Joseph, as we can see here that the benefits of fossil fuels are only one-sided matter and actually do not account for the ramifications or consequences that will significantly affect the society. And why is it that our energy costs are still expensive, and how is this matter conversational at best?
Firstly, it is controversial since this issue revolves on the matters of environmental, economic, and political aspects.
Alright, so thank you for the wonderful elaboration, Professor Joseph. Now for us to summarize, as we go through the lengthy spectrum of the conference, I think Engineer Mavi De Luna would like to summarize how fossil fuels are the top contributing factor as to why the environment is totally declining. So may we ask for your comments, Engineer Mavi and Professor Joseph?
As fossil fuels are contributing a lot of negative impact on the environment and the public, collective action against it is a mandatory civic responsibility that society must opt to do. With the growing fears of terror and intimidation from big-shot corporations and corrupt government institutions, these individual voices collated as one would tear this immoral system, eventually ending one of the pressing problems our society has.
There are many propositions to strengthen further the collective action on finding an alternative to fossil fuels. Having technological advancements, crafting of appropriately new laws and policies, and the consensus from the public improve the position of such collective action, putting an end to the socio-environmental conundrum. Just a heads up that one should be reminded that the problem of fossil fuels is not just environmentally concerned but politically motivated as well.
Here is another question from our comments. This is actually directed to Engineer Mavi De Luna, and let me read it to you. So, okay, here as it goes, Engineer Mavi, as a professional in the incentives of energy usage, here in the Philippines, what are the most possible actions that we can look into if we genuinely want to stop the fossil fuels as energy providers? Please answer that question. It would be really enlightening, Dr. Mavi. I mean, Engineer Mavi.
Here in the Philippines, as much as creating alternatives is concerned, most of the innovative technologies being proposed or used by our economic sectors still utilize traditional manufacturing approaches. These practices or systems require a massive load of electricity to operate, and we all know that most of our electricity comes from the fossil fuels we burn. Instead of putting alternatives that are either carbon neutral or environment friendly, we have a fair share of contribution to the worsening conditions of our environment.
So therefore, Engineer Mavi, can we actually say that are these kinds of efforts against fossil fuels are efficient enough in eradicating or reducing their consumption? Or how can we, sige sa atin na lang, how can we Filipinos actually mitigate and protect energy without compromising the environment and the well-being of the people? Because additionally, are the laws and programs of our government implemented in contemporary times compelling enough to resolve the issues further?
First, if we try to truly seek a collective action against the use of fossil fuels to reduce further environmental damage, an efficient way would be to exhaust all choices. We were introduced to the idea of battery or electric cars to reduce the use of gasoline. The theory of electric cars seemed to be a great solution to actually fight climate change because it produces zero emissions.
However, in the state of our country, personally, electric cars are not yet a feasible solution to go against the use of fossil fuels.
We can see that this is a good development. Still, with the country garnering in the at least 6.3 million vehicles, which was dated back in 2010, the number of 28 electric vehicles manufactured has too little potential in the country. Therefore, in our time today, we can say that mitigating or at least exhausting the use of e-vehicles as the means of transportation is lacking.
So, for you, for our directors, for our panels here, what do you think should be an approach that we should take towards the issue? Like, may we ask for your comments, Professor Joseph, Professor Dayan, and Engineer Mavi?
We are looking for a promising approach for the long run. So we are looking at a duty-based approach under the non-consequentialist theories provided by Bond et al. Our intention here is to make an ethical decision because it is a part of our obligation to do what is morally or at least environmentally right and not because of the consequences of our actions as expressed by the philosopher Immanuel Kant.
Which is why we're looking into a more environmentally positive project that perhaps national and local governments, Department of Environment and Natural Resources, and the Department of Energy can take accountability and climatic action.
Lastly, as we almost reach the end of our conference, to connect, I would like to add that it is highly evident that these actions, such as providing or even manufacturing electric vehicles, are not actually efficient for the government to reduce the consumption of fossil fuels. However, switching from gasoline-powered vehicles to electric vehicles is just a mere band-aid solution. So therefore, I think we need to find a viable alternative that would effectively fight against the worsening of climate change.
Evidence suggests that existing power sources may be hampered by drought and climate change effects. Meeting these expectations might come at a tremendous economic and environmental cost if sufficient planning is not appropriately prioritized. Faced with possibly restricted supply, projecting demand fluctuations in the face of future climate change is crucial for establishing cost-effective strategies and to satisfy or alleviate demand.
We must advocate standing against the excessive use of fossil fuels because we want to save our environment for future generations. If our actions are being carefully planned, we can allocate and invest our resources to effectively establish a long-term solution to address the environmental crisis.
Alright, there you have it, folks. Thank you to Professor Joseph, Professor Dayan, and Engineer Mavi for the wonderful press conference here on our live. Okay, thank you for tuning in on the live conferences with the members of the Philippine Environmental Studies Organization on principle of EnvironEthics, the way forward. And we